Titaneus, genetically modified titanic human made in the laboratory in giant artificial wombs. Size, 12 to 36 feet tall. Head circumference, minimum 300 centimeters, 400 centimeters to 500 centimeters. Cranial volume, 50,000 to 100,000 cubic cm. Brain weight, 1/3, 1/2 to 1 ton. Intelligence with stabilized IQ, semantic, mathematical, and spatial plus or minus 10,000, 50,000, 100,000 to 1 million maximum intelligence points. Encephalization coefficient, ratio of 10 to 1, 9 times too much brain in terms of satisfying the biological vital conditions and moving the body forward. Quantity of brain neurons, 2,000 to 10,000 billion. Aggressiveness, low. Skin, melanin pigmentation index with a low gradient from 1 to 12 pale pinkish white. Hair, color black, brown, red or blonde. Eyes, tint gray, blue or green. Life expectancy, plus or minus 200 to 300 up to 1,000 years, tripling and plus of telomere length or imitation of the same principle of self-renewal of telomeres as in quasi-immortal lobsters. Ability to manage and save the Earth, X, global warming extreme. Ability to humanize space, colonization extreme. Ability to defend humanity against aliens, extreme. Cell quantity, 600 to 1,000 billion human cells. Weight of the Titaneus, 30, 70 to 100 tons. Initially, when I was theorizing about the enhanced human Amadeus Frankenstein, I didn't see the point in creating an even more giant version of the human. I figured humans over 20 to 30 feet would be too monstrous and unnecessary, as the Amadeus Chi score of 1,000 to 10,000 points would already be enough. However, the other day while watching a report on space, viewing an animation of several swirling galaxies, so I put myself in the shoes of the Amadeus, which I mistakenly believed was necessarily always the best unit of interstellar invasion. I had an enlightenment and deduced that the Amadeus, whom we are supposed to send everywhere in the universe from the Earth, our mother planet according to my most accomplished and probable plans scriptwise speaking, would not want to be catapulted to face alien species potentially much larger and more powerful than them, inversion-gifted giant dinosaurs, also optimized maximally by many manipulations of the extraterrestrial DNA according to their planetary gravity. They would certainly be afraid to enter hyperstructures of galactic clusters with as little height and danger as the millions of extraterrestrial species living up there in the universe, and would only want to turn back sooner or later, fearing the rapid annihilation of their armada with no escape. It is the Amadeus who would ask us to create more imposing and strong protectors for them, ensuring them full control of the planets they will conquer with all the weapons and soldiers from small to giant formats that are always necessary. When we talk about the conquest of space, it is absolutely another way of thinking, therefore at a level of scale where everything is far and disproportionate. Distance, planets, stars, gigantic plants, dinosaur animals, spaceships, armaments, black holes, galaxies, galactic clusters, etc. So everything has to be rethought in another way that is much more extensive and pharaonic. For now, our civilization is still in larval mode, and especially in reprimatization mode, which is a disaster in terms of rapid genetic regression. We are so unintelligent and evolved that people are still wondering if we should really evolve, similar to a chimpanzee 7 million years ago wondering if they should really evolve into an optimized male Dolph Lundgren or female Sharon Stone. Stay the same. which will be impossible because living things are always evolving, or genetic regression. Because nothing stays perfectly the same in biology, or even if egalitarian genetic regression where there would be no more intolerance and judgment would not be the best way, world mixed race human identical everywhere on Earth, and this especially in West. I have already glimpsed the future of humanity in my research because I have been working specifically on this for several years, which is why I think that it is not only the Amadeus who would ask us to create their protector Titaneus. However, in all probability it is they who will have the most suitable intelligence to manufacture them in the laboratory, and not the normal humans of our era who are still probably very limited intellectually speaking, or imagined through the metabrain or planetary brain. If we got used to my graphs of increase in intelligence according to the size of the brain and the optimal encephalization coefficient still to be generated artificially by the manipulations offered by naturalist eugenics. Then I thought about the Matryoshka Russian dolls which fit perfectly into each other, and as I am a big fan of fractal geometry, I immediately made the connection that the most powerful extraterrestrial civilizations, and difficult to thwart, are surely those which are to be faced on all scales of magnitude. Because as much as they have the possibility of attacking on small scales, as much as they have medium-sized variants, as much as they have giant-sized variants, so any civilization facing them will have great difficulty in defeating them and annihilating them at all size scales. This mechanism of reproduction of a genetic species of all sizes is what makes civilizations even more unbeatable on a planetary, galactic, and ultimately universe scale. Similar to Titaneus, they took over a scene from Jaws 3 in the Undersea Station, 1983. Director, Joe Alves. Production, Universal Pictures. We can clearly see in this film that the shark version of the Titanic ancestor megalodon of 20 meters seems much more dangerous than the modern version of the great white shark of 6 meters, Carcharodon carcharias. I've always said, a bird with a bigger brain will be statistically smarter because it has more neurons to potentially link together. Ravens and crows, I have never been able to approach them from a distance. It's for nothing that the parrots with the biggest brains on the planet are able to learn hundreds of words, the gray parrot and blue macaw being supposedly the best in all categories, compared to the miniature hummingbirds, apart from a few exceptions like parakeets, but they seem to pronounce words less well. Budgies, 1,000 words. Amazonian parrots, 300 words. Indian parakeets, 250 words. Cockatiels, 250 words. Quaker parrots, 50 to 60 words. As much as colored genes are rare and precious in birds, dogs, cats, they are 1,000 times more important to protect in our own human species. Evolution of human intelligence from the chimpanzee, miniature brain, to the Titaneus, gigantic brain. From the chimpanzee, 360 gr of brain, 20 centimeters of cranial circumference and 12 to 25 points of chi. The Australopithecus, 500 gr of brain, 40 centimeters of cranial circumference and 42 points of chi. The archaic sapiens, 1280 gr of brain, 50 centimeters of cranial circumference and 75 points of chi, while passing by the modern human, 1380 gr of brain, 55 centimeters of cranial circumference and 100 points of chi. The Amadeus, 15,000 gr of brain, 115 centimeters in cranial circumference and 1,000 to 10,000 points of chi. The Alexandrius, 1/4 ton of brain, 300 centimeters in cranial circumference and 250,000 points of chi, up to Titaneus, 1 ton of brain, 500 centimeters head circumference and 1 million chi points. Being about 1,000 years ahead of my civilization, this photograph is historic because it shows the unchanging evolution, the projection of human craniology, and the increase in intelligence of the next millions or even billions of years into the future. In the sense, or I think that a titanic human does not have a great chance of seeing the light of day within 300 years, rather in 500 years or even up to 1,000 years, the level of eugenic difficulty being very high. So if in 3023 scientists produce the equivalent of a Titaneus, then they can say that a theorist had glimpsed them no less than a millennium ago. This may seem like an innocuous image among many others, but it took me 28 years or 1/4 of a century to understand through my research on intelligence, which began in my adolescence around the age of 15 in my high school library. It paves the way for the humanity of the future who will want to gain in chi score and proportionally in intelligence in order to colonize space and protect themselves from extraterrestrial invasions, the cranial volume being the easiest variable to work for any intelligent civilization. I have not only found every craniometric and numerical data extrapolated from the typography and the average typical possibilities of our human skull, so this represents the apotheosis of what can look like and what can be the maximum size of a human skull as much on Earth than the other planets in the universe. Of 8 billion people, I am the only one to have first thought and theorized in a scientifically and anthropologically valid way the humans of the future with such a degree of precision, which in the future will be correlated by future generations. Because in my time, people don't really understand my research in advanced craniometry, they prefer to give visibility to the first immigrants from the third world, to artists playing the flute with their nose without a revolutionary staff or other stupid artistic products requiring only small chi. Amadeus' human skull with 1,000 to 10,000 IQ points will beat 7 to 8 out of 10 potential alien species. Human Titaneus will beat 8 to 9 out of 10 alien civilizations. Who will take control of the Milky Way galaxy for us? Humans of the future Amadeus and Titaneus Frankenstein. The prototype skull that I hold in my hands is not the ultimate Amadeus skull because it is not at all optimized but rather based on the proportions of today's skulls, which are rather the result of 56 million years of evolution from the first primate ancestors. The forehead is not high enough, broad and prominent. The top of the head should be a minimum of 2 to 3 times higher, therefore containing several hundred grams of additional brain, therefore a better optimized chi according to a new, more advantageous, or so-called superior cranial configuration. With an Amadeus human skull of such a volume, we will become a true galactic-level civilization feared by other extraterrestrial populations who will neither more nor less than circumvent the solar system instead of invading it at the first opportunity, since they usually detect living species on planets in advance before conquering them so as not to have fatal self-destructive surprises. Our success rate, generativity rate, and our rate of civilizational expansion will be drastically increased, and probably more than 50% of civilizations will have trouble beating Amadeus-type humans, more precisely 70 to 80%, so our chance of neutralizing them and taking the alien inhabited planets will now be around a 7 in 10 chance. Extraterrestrials will rarely be bigger than our titanic human version with pharaonically high chi. Titaneus humans, which are to be produced near the planets or satellites to be conquered in the giant artificial wombs of our spaceships and space stations, can be exactly manufactured during gestation to the maximum size the planet can support as gigantic dinosaur-like walking animals. According to their specific gravity, for example, a planet with a lower gravity can receive a larger and more massive human Titaneus which will still weigh less on this sphere. As a result, they will be of the most colossal size possible so that they will trample and crush any extraterrestrial civilization on the spot by the superiority of their weight, their size, and their chi approaching the 1 million weight, highly intelligence-optimized 1-ton Titaneus calculating motor brain. The Titan's Titaneus will only have to walk on a planet in the process of human takeover, frighten the alien populations by shouting loudly, clapping their hands, stomping, jumping in place, kicking feet to tens or even hundreds of them, by throwing themselves on the ground face to crush several of them, by sitting on them, by tearing the roof of their dwellings, and destroying their buildings with large metal sticks, by defeating their centers of ballistic fire or armaments of importance, and by destroying one by one their national and planetary parliaments. The poor little and panicked ETs will only be able to save by running or trying to shoot with their miniature armaments compared to the imposing size of the Titaneus. Only medium-powered weapons such as bazookas, high-velocity machine gunners, tanks, mortars, missiles, and war cannons can still do serious damage to our armies of human giants. One non-explosive shell equals one normal ball of similar scale human versus giant size. During extraplanetary invasions, the Titaneus can rightly wear protective clothing such as light Kevlar bulletproof vests, chain mail or armor similar to medieval times, ensuring that they are not pierced unnecessarily. With their strength and height, the Amadeus or Titaneus will be able to support very heavy and armored armor compared to what a normal human could carry around. As a historical military comparison, Napoleon Bonaparte had an average success rate of 9 battles out of 10, which he won thanks to the superiority of his military strategies, the quality of his armaments, and French troops. Human with 100 points of useless IQ against alien civilizations. According to my probabilistic intellectual civilizationalist naturalist estimates, it will be useless to send humans into space with the average current chi of 100 points, equals 100 kilometers per hour, to colonize the universe and confront the many extraterrestrial civilizations, because they will to be neither more nor less than smash your face in just a few days, equivalent to sending children or people with Down syndrome to face gifted people from the best universities on Earth and or historic world chess champions. Even worse, Australian Aborigines driving at 65 kilometers per hour or sub-Saharans advancing at 75 to 85 kilometers/h. It would be of the order of the sacrifice, since the extraterrestrials have a minimum of 300 points of chi while going up southwest. They drive the equivalent of 300 km/h intellectually speaking. Humans with 100 points of chi will not be able to solve the problems of space at all. The proof: our current civilization is incapable of having a small lunar or Martian base, and even less of manufacturing a fleet of respectable spaceships. The 100-point humans will arrive at the other end of the galaxy and wonder if they can have access to TVA to listen to their variety show Sucre Sale, follow Big Brothers, Occupation Double, watch recipe shows and funny little cats, and not reading 100 pages of Wikipedia a day or useful science encyclopedias on the space station. We will only have a real chance of permanently colonizing space and of course defeating extraterrestrial civilizations, because they too live in the various habitable zones near the stars, with future humans optimized to the chi of precisely 300, 500 to 1,000 points minimum. For example, the Amadeus with 1,000 chi points will run at a speed of 1,000 kilometers per hour, therefore 10 times faster than today's humans, and will have a real chance of foreseeing and thwarting a majority of plans. Invasions, extraterrestrial military response or resolution, and adherence to very complex and specific intercivilizational treaties in terms of laws and regulations. therefore not to be fooled by the first civilization to arrive. With the 100 minimum chi points, obviously no one has the 100 points just because this is an average and the majority of normally intelligent people have more than 110 to 120 points. And astronauts have rather a minimum of 130 to 160 points in our time because the space agencies take the most advantageous applications, ensuring a better chance of success of the missions and not to plant it for lack of resource of intellectual calculations. For example, Julie Payette with 150 points of Chi and speaking 6 languages, the best-rated woman out of 5,330 applications, was chosen for her high intelligence compared to the average person of her time, STS 96 and STS 127 missions, so she will have more potential ability to adequately maneuver space technological devices, repair the 1001 electronic or mechanical parts of rockets that often break down and require maintenance, ensure the proper functioning of the International Space Station, carry out scholarly research in their field of specialization, computer engineer, etc. The humans of today that we are will certainly be able to go into space. However, their zone of influence and ability to dominate the distant universe will be very limited. They will not be the ones we should preferably send, but our best optimized human civilizational elements which, according to statistics, will have a real chance of survival in interstellar space, which is the most extremophile environment after the hot Sahara or cold planetary deserts, North Pole and South Pole. They will instead be relegated to a role of space tourists, being able to wander around the planets and satellites of our solar system and nearby ones like Alpha Centauri, but not necessarily into the next extremely distant galaxies, unless they have been augmented somewhat in intelligence over the centuries of minimal genetic optimizations, which will automatically increase their possibility of thoughts and suitable responses against extremely dangerous extraterrestrial civilizations, and having no mercy for the weakest civilizations of the galaxy, and even worse of the universe, or the creatures are probably even more monstrous and ingenious. As long as we humans have fun with each other in our little patch of sand that the solar system represents, there is no problem, because we can even make a school group with Down syndrome travel to one of the 95 satellites of Jupiter. They will have a lot of fun, eating McDonald's burgers and fries, laughing and fooling around with their average 30 to 70 IQ points. That is not the problem in itself. The problem arises when we add the extraterrestrial variable, which has different genetics than ours. They do not have the same spatial expansion plans as our human civilization. They do not have the same technologies. They don't have the same chi. They don't have the same ideologies. They look for easy-to-take planets like lions look for easy-to-eat prey. As soon as the extraterrestrial variable enters the equation despite us, then a new world of probability is set in motion, and immediately a civilizational struggle begins. And the civilization that will have the highest chi and or the best armaments will sooner or later triumph over the weakest civilization. Such are the laws of nature. Whether we like it or not, we will be confronted one day or another with extraterrestrial civilizations that will not be in our stellar environment, only wanting to make friends light years from their home planet. Humanization of the Laniakea galactic supercluster. This is what I was talking about, which made me realize the dangerousness of the hyperstructures of space. The galactic supercluster, in which we are called Laniakea, 520 million light-years in diameter, will preferably be colonized by the Amadeus, helped by their much larger Titaneus protectors, and being at the maximum of their possibility of mastering and destroying extraterrestrial civilizations. We, the little humans of the future, with a minimum of 200 to 300 points of chi, because otherwise we will not know what to do in the space stations, and the risk of being devoured by the extraterrestrials at our stellar destination will be too probable. Will arrive thereafter on each planet because the extraterrestrial field will have been dominated and cleaned successively by the army of robots, the Titaneus, and then the Amadeus. Extraterrestrials frequently eat civilizations in their path, especially those that do not comply with their population planning and management of environmental resources of Planet X, as much as the majority of animals in nature will eat other weaker animals, vulnerable or lower in the hierarchy of the planetary food pyramid. All of us form an indestructible unit, since based on the principle of multi-scale fractal civilization, so we become much more difficult to beat in the entire area of the Chaosmos universe. The galactic cluster of Virgo, which is the largest of the galactic supercluster of Laniakea, would include no less than 10,000 galaxies like ours, the Milky Way, each galaxy having no less than 100 to 200 billion stars on average. Organizing a trip to deep space is equivalent to undertaking a trip to Antarctica, so it is necessary to send potentially the most resourceful, far-sighted, non-aggressive people, equipped with the best aptitudes and skills of all kinds: engineering, medicine, physics, chemistry, group psychology, computer science, etc. Otherwise they risk quickly perishing if mechanical breakdowns of aerospace equipment or computer onboard computers occur early in the mission. The whole team is in danger of death at the slightest damage. In space, the mission is on an even more perilous and risky level, with a factor at least 100 to 1,000 times more difficult to survive in the long term: cosmic radiation, interminable distances, despair or depressions linked to isolation or the lack of nature. The human, however, evolved in the greenery and not only in the grayness of the concrete or the monotonous materials of the shuttle. Wars and internal conflicts of the crew, extraterrestrial threats, vacuum of space, etc. Metaphor of civilization engaging on different scales like Russian dolls. Based on my graph that I theorized about the possible declensions of future humans, I think the example of Russian dolls is best suited to demonstrate the usefulness of having one's own civilizational genetics in several variants of different sizes in order to adapt as much to the terrestrial microscopic world and as macroscopic in space. As I have already explained, it will be impossible for humanity to remain perfectly identical to what it is today because, on the one hand, matter evolves on its own, this phenomenon modifying our phenotype. Either humanity will experience a genetic regression which will also change its appearance, or we will become partially a robot or cyborg, or we will mix our DNA with other animals of nature. Eyes with night vision, property of phosphorescence, ability fine ultrasound hearing similar to the bat, chameleon-like camouflage, finger cupping allowing you to climb the wall, increase in the number and surface area of olfactory cells providing a more developed sense of smell, etc., and or with genes extraterrestrials giving us intelligence genes or other rare physiognomic properties more quickly. So much so that we can already predict that humans evolving on planetary satellites such as Venus, Neptune, etc. will each have their own specific epigenetic modification in their own way, self-adaptive to geographic factors and environmental variables, as we have already seen. So no matter what the humans of the future will look like in terms of their phenotypic appearance, their size could similarly range from the smallest human versions to the largest, not to say giant or even extremely gigantic, not only the size of a Tyrannosaurus rex of 5 to 6 meters in height x 13 meters in length with a weight of 18.4 tons. However, rather of the type of the Patagonian titan in the family of sauropod titanosaurs, Patagodoton majorum, of 11 to 15 meters height with 37 meters in length, a gauge of 8.5 meters and a weight of 70 tons. Environmental variables such as planetary gravitation and oxygen levels will directly influence the development possibilities of animals and limit them to ceilings of size under which it becomes too difficult to move by excess heaviness, a phenomenon similar to tanks having to have as much a weight not too heavy for sufficient support on the ground, plus a military vehicle engine capacity or relative to the motricity powerful enough to move the animal or the similar dinosaur or the tank tiger. And Panther had good lift except that the mouse tank was at the limit of the intersection of the weight versus lift versus engine power ratio settings, or a potential lack of sufficient oxygenation of the tissues by normal respirations allowed not only by lung capacity but also by pressure atmospheric, kilopascal, kPa, planetary humidity levels, etc. Civilization in Russian doll's Matryoshka mode is the example of a fractal geometric structure which is always based on the same structural form and which will simply develop to several sizes on variable scales from small to large. When the Russian doll civilization unfolds, then it will fill almost all of the space-time to be colonized with the unfolding of its genetics, therefore being more adapted to all the scales of mastery of other creatures, dominating them as much the small ones as the planetary animals of dinosaur-like stature, especially their gifted form most dangerous to our hegemony, e.g. a big-brained version of the herbivorous Brachiosaurus. Knowing that each human version in Russian doll deployable civilization mode has its place and suitability based on its scale size, individuals in the civilization will not try to supplant each other with their abilities. Superior or not, they all know in their position that they need as much the tallest to open the way as the smallest, minimum height of 1.50 meters since being the limit of human dwarfism, who can better control the microscopic environment, alien jungles and all. Smaller human versions have smaller fingers and can perform finer tasks and operations, e.g. the thinner, nimble fingers of women in computer assembly plants versus the thick fingers of giants that can break the back of an extraterrestrial animal with the snap of a finger and or lifting very heavy payloads of several tons being impossible to lift for all other humans of lesser size. Amadeus humans already quite tall at 12 feet tall, will likely fear the coming of 20 to 30 foot giants, or 20 to 30 meter tall dinosaur-type giant aliens on the other planets they will visit during building our civilization in the universe. 12-foot humans can be quite easily crushed by living organisms 20 to 30 feet tall and obviously with bigger brains, thus more potential intelligence and means to beat them intellectually, strategically, and militarily speaking. They should not be produced in large quantities. They have a supporting role in the military strategies of shock during the first phases of planetary colonization, item of the use of elephants in the history of antiquity with the Indian armies, Carthaginian or Chinese. Titan humans can be artificially generated with giant artificial wombs from spaceships arriving in the entourage of planets and galaxies to be invaded. They should not be produced in large quantities. They have a supporting role in the military strategies of shock during the first phases of planetary colonization, item of the use of elephants in the history of antiquity with the Indian armies, Carthaginian or Chinese. Titan humans can be artificially generated with giant artificial wombs from spaceships arriving in the entourage of planets and galaxies to be invaded. Back. OCR scan.